Let's explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday and welcome to Why We Vote. Man, this was a much better week than last week, Ash, and the week before that as well. Joined by the one and only Ash Epp, as always. How you doing, Ash?
I'm doing well. I'm encouraged and excited by the movement that we're seeing on elections all over the place. I'm further encouraged and excited about the fact that nobody's buying the narrative anymore.
I know. I love it. We got like, it's like we're almost at the point where we have like mutual consensus with the left and the right on election integrity. We're almost there. It's almost like when it's not President Trump that's the subject of the election, you know. Well, in their case, they think that he's fraudulently elected. We played those clips all last week. It's almost like all of a sudden now they're back on the elections are fraudulent train again, or at least there's a lot of fraud in our elections, I should say. So
yeah, I'm not as concerned about the left because I think they're largely irrelevant and becoming an ever smaller group. And I'm in Colorado, right? So the parties are 50% of the state. It's a little bit more Democrat than Republican, but 50% of the state is unaffiliated, and that's where I spend most of my time. And I can tell you, the Republicans added to the unaffiliated, that group, not believing the narrative, not believing the gold standard, not believing all the stories. And the Tina Peters stuff is particularly interesting to us here in Colorado.
Yeah. So if we have time, we're going to get into the Venezuelan deposition, but we've got a special guest joining us tonight before we get started. So before we bring on our guest, let's go ahead and talk about our two sponsors for tonight's show. And first up, Badlanders. You guys are all familiar with Loaded Gun Coffee. They have been a longtime supporter of Badlands, and you may have met them in person at some of the Guard events. But did you know that they're a veteran-ran, family-owned shop in Lake Havasu, Arizona? Every bag of their whole bean coffee delivers high-octane, patriotic punches of pure flavor. With a long family history of commitment to freedom, every bag is a testament of pride and honor, from the skilled farmers who cultivate each blend to the roasters that handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world. Loaded Gun Coffee has mastered their unique brewing methods, resulting in the best tasting coffee around. This coffee is smooth and delicious and the perfect way to start your mornings. Get over to badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and use promo code Badlands to get 10% off your order. If you are in Lake Havasu area, stop by their newly renovated store and say hello. Tell them Ash and CannCon sent you, and say hello. They're awesome people, really are. Again, you can check them out at badlandsmedia.tv/loaded. Use promo code Badlands and stay loaded with Loaded Gun Coffee.
Yeah, they got cool merch too.
Ash is rocking the hat.
I love that you added my name to the tell them we sent you this time. Was it good?
I did
good
always
correction
add
you
your
made.
name. I say whoever my co-host is. If it's Alpha, it's Alpha. If it's you, it's you. Always.
Club on Tuesday, you said tell them CannCon sent you.
Oh, well, that's because.
And then we argued about it.
All right, you want to talk about our good friends over at Scales?
Heck yeah.
That's
Wear your freedom proudly and celebrate America in style with the Scales Freedom Collection. Scales offers a line of long sleeve performance shirts, buttery soft tees, and hats with ocean-inspired patriotic prints. Every piece is designed to keep you cool, protected, and proud to be an American. Shop now at badlandsmedia.tv/scales and enter code Badlands at checkout for 20% off your next purchase. And I wore my Gulf of America hat to Oktoberfest last weekend when we were doing our Badlander meetup in Castle Rock, and it was a hit. I got tons of compliments on it from random people in the street, and we also danced to some German music, and we're going to play that on OnlyLands tonight.
Very cool. I wore my my long sleeve shirt to dinner for my brother's birthday on Wednesday, I think, or Thursday, Friday, Tuesday. It was Tuesday. On Tuesday, and Christy wore the dress from what's the boutique brand? What was their name?
Oh, Touch of Whimsy.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. It was escaping my mind. Okay, so
bit of whimsy.
Bit of whimsy. Yeah. And she looks great in that dress. Love that dress on her.
The black and white one.
Yeah.
She does look great in that dress.
All right. So, guys, we've got a special guest joining us tonight. If you guys remember following the 2020 election, there was that infamous phone call. I love the phone call between President Trump, Brad Raffensperger, and a bunch of individuals in Georgia, as well as in the Trump circle. And our guest tonight is one of those individuals that was on that call. So please welcome to the stage Cleta Mitchell of the Election Integrity Network. Cleta, it is great to have you on for the first time ever on Why We Vote, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get going here, why don't you tell our audience just a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
Well, I am Cleta Mitchell. I am the founder and chairman of the Election Integrity Network, which is something that I organized with the support of the Conservative Partnership Institute, where I am a senior legal fellow. I have been there since February of 2021 because of my work on behalf of President Trump. I'm an election lawyer. I practiced campaign finance, political law, election law, all of this. I call it the processes and the business and regulation of process and policy, the political process and policy in the country. And I've practiced in that arena for many decades. And I was a volunteer attorney for President Trump in the post-election in Georgia in 2020. I was asked by the White House to go there the day after the election, which I did. And because of that, the perverts at the Lincoln Project came after me because of the phone call. And so I ended up resigning my 20-year partnership at a large national firm and joined the Conservative Partnership Institute, where I have been able to spend all day, every day, ever since, working on fixing the elections and the problems that we saw manifest themselves in 2020. So the Election Integrity Network is something that I wanted to take the angst and the concern and the anger that people felt after 2020 when people woke up the morning after the election and said, hey, what happened? And that's a very darn good question. And I wanted to take those questions and mobilize people to try to fix things so that it never happened again. And so that's really was the impetus for the Election Integrity Network. And since then, we have formed state coalitions in 28 states. And we also have national working groups. We started those in 2023, where people join on Zoom calls to learn about and work on, not just learn about, but to get engaged in working on various aspects of the election process, whether it's cleaning voter rolls. How do you clean voter rolls? What does that mean? How to do it? There have been literally tens of thousands of volunteer hours spent over the last 4.5 years by patriots all over the country who've been working on identifying the problems, the very significant problems in our nation's voter rolls. And that's just one example. We have a working group on voting technology. What should the law say? What should we require? What should we prohibit? There is a working group on restoration of election day that deals with the voting process. How many days, if any, of early voting should there be? There darn sure shouldn't be 45 days of early voting like Virginia has. When you think about the governor's race in Virginia and voting started a week ago, it's impossible to try to staff that, to have oversight and accountability, which of course what the left wants is no oversight, no accountability. So, and then we worked very hard last year on creating public awareness of the threat of non-citizen voting in the 2024 election. I mean, it sort of occurred to me in early 2024 that, wait a minute, why bother to bring all those illegals across the border if you're not going to figure out how to vote them? So we started the Only Citizens Vote Coalition. I worked with Congressman Chip Roy and Senator Mike Lee to introduce the SAVE Act. And we're working now on another project, which we can talk about shortly, about how we can require documentary proof of citizenship for people to register to vote. So I just, I'll just close this sort of intro with this little fact that the Capital Research Center in its publication Influence Watch, they have calculated that between about 2011 and 2020, the left raised and spent between 11 and 14 billion dollars. That's billions with a B, changing the way we vote, changing as a means of trying to destroy and change our election and our political system. And they have largely succeeded, and even in red states. And so we have a lot of work to do. We don't have $11 billion and we don't have 10 years. We have limited time because we have to fix these election procedures and laws as soon as we can. So that's what we're about the business of doing, is identifying the problems, getting people involved in giving oversight to their elections, their election process, just like parents have figured out they need to attend the school board meetings. People need to be at their election board meetings and be looking over the shoulders of their elections. So that's what the Election Integrity Network is all about, is training ordinary patriotic citizens across the country how they can impact the elections where they live.
Yeah, you bring up the $11 billion that the left has raised, and I've done a lot of work with, and as well as Ashe, with Peter Berniger and Draza Smith and Chris Gleason, some of the people that were doing the Act Blue smurfing stuff, and I don't think that's organic. What you're doing by getting people engaged at the local level and getting them in groups like this, that is organic, because you can see the bodies doing the work. But the $11 billion, not none of it, but most of that is, to me, it's not organic. That is manufactured. That is our own taxpayer dollars, being brought back. Yeah, it's dark money. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Well, I will say this: there are some leftist billionaires. Pierre Omidyar is one of the founders of eBay, and he is a gazillionaire. And he personally has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in creating all these entities on the left that have disrupted and continue to disrupt our elections. And I mean, he just by himself, he's probably put in $1 billion. And then you've got the $500 million that Mark Zuckerberg spent in 2020 to drive up the Democrat turnout in places like Milwaukee and Madison and the 5 Democrat strongholds in Wisconsin that pushed the statewide total to support Biden, even though. It was clear that they were just driving up Democrat turnout, and that's what they did all over the country in key places. So, they've got their billionaires, but you're right. I don't know that I ought to ask the Capital Research Center if they've gone back into their original study to see how much of that money might have been tax money, now that we know how much of their funding of the left comes from you and me, which is quite disturbing.
Yeah. And even if it is, so maybe it's, laundered tax money through AID going to other entities. Maybe it's just these billionaires and the money is being smurfed. And I think it's great that you're on the show, because I think of all the people that have ever been on the show, you have you're an elections lawyer, I think we can say, right? You've done work in that domain. And probably campaign finance as well. Smurfing is identity theft. It's using the identities of other people to launder campaign donations and make them look very small. Obama piloted this in 2008, in my opinion. We had the RNC versus DNC lawsuit in 2013 that awarded the worst fine for this kind of behavior. Wasn't called smurfing then, but I think it's the precursor to what we see now. That action of, say it's Act Blue, you could also say it's Win Red, that action of using the identities of people without their knowledge and consent to make it look like really big campaign buckets of money are being awarded to these campaigns, donated to these campaigns through people without it's a portfolio of crime, Cleta. My question is, what is your level of confidence that is something that I know there's a federal investigation into it. Is that something that we're going to be able to see prosecuted, or is it something that's going to be, oh, it was just more campaign finance? It's not just campaign finance. We're talking about real criminal statutes.
Well, we are. My understanding is that that there is an investigation at the Department of Justice in the criminal division, and there should be. I first started hearing about this. Well, you mentioned Obama in 2008. I had a conversation with a friend of mine from Milwaukee whose stepchildren were. She was having dinner with one or more of her stepchildren. I think that they were in college in Washington, D.C. And they brought friends of theirs, classmates who are from other countries, who talked about how they'd given money to Obama.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, that's illegal. And she actually asked them that. You're not allowed to give money, I didn't think, to an American candidate. They said, oh, nobody checks. And of course, I think that's one of the things. So, there's no way that that's real. It's the same. There's no way that Joe Biden got 81 million votes. That's just, when you look at the data and you see that spike during COVID. I mean, seriously? I mean, it's just not possible. So trying to get to the bottom of all of that. I know that I think that there's a real effort in the administration to try to get to the bottom of that. People in states like Georgia, you mentioned Georgia, people who, there have been a lot of things that have been discovered since 2020, since the election, that verify or validate that that was not a proper outcome. The president would get mad at me. He would say, Cleta, don't you think I won Georgia by 400,000 votes? And I just always tell him, Mr. President, I don't think we know who won Georgia.
Right.
It was such a colossal mess intentionally. But now there are some efforts, I think, to try to get documents. The Department of Justice has served notice that it wants to obtain the federal records. They should. One problem exists. There are two problems. One is that there's the people at Voter GA learned, I want to say in 2021 or early 2022, that some of the counties had destroyed the ballot images that they were, or even possibly some of the ballots. There are missing ballots. There are missing ballot images. And so we know that has happened, but there has been an order, a litigation stay that they only have to keep the records for federal elections for 22 months. But there has been an order, a litigation order to not, because there's still cases pending.
Yeah.
That haven't been heard about the 2020 election. And it's just sitting before a trial court in Fulton County. But the DOJ has served notice that it wants all of the ballots, the original ballots from Fulton County, turned over to the Department of Justice. And just yesterday, the Georgia State Board of Elections issued a subpoena to Fulton County to turn over all of the ballots. And one of the reasons that matters is because there were a whole group of what are called pristine ballots that were said to exist and that were supposed to have been turned over in a trial in 2022. But the judge, all of a sudden, after a year, found that, I guess I don't have jurisdiction. That was reversed. But anyway.
So you just real quick, Cleta, because you kind of broke some news there. The Garland Favorito case, President Trump has retruthed two of my articles, and both of them were about Garland's case getting overturned at the Supreme Court in Henry County versus Sons of Confederate Veterans. And he's now, I think, over 1,200 days that he's been waiting for the lower courts to reassign that case. But what you just said there, I've been keeping close to my chest, and that is that the DOJ has subpoenaed the physical ballots in Fulton County. And that's huge, because that's going to, that's the DOJ coming in and saying, here, we got to see these, which is going to kind of I guess it's a go around from Garland's case. And that's a big deal.
Well, it is a big deal. And, we know from what Garland and in his case had been able to do was they had been able to inspect the ballot images. And from that, they found duplicates. They found, I want to say there were about 3,500 duplicate ballots. Remember, this is an election that was decided by 11,779 votes. And so we know, so you take out 3,500 of those, or because you don't know which 35, you have to eliminate all of them. And then what happened after that was that there was an effort to get the access to inspect the actual ballots, not just the images, but the ballots themselves. And the Attorney General, oh Lord, if there's anybody listening to the sound of my voice and you live in Georgia, please do not vote for Brad Raffensperger or Chris Carr for governor. Both of those morons are running for governor, and they're dreadful. I mean, they came in and told the court that the ballot that they would not be able to, the court should not allow inspection of the ballots because it would show how people voted. Well, yes, that would show how people voted, but it won't tell you how any individual person voted because the identifiers are removed from the ballots before they are counted. And yes, it is important to also inspect the envelopes to see if they had the statutorily required information. But I'm telling you, Chris Carr has been, he's just, I just don't know what he does. He does nothing to be helpful. He's running for governor. And Brad Raffensperger was an absolute stumbling block against President Trump, as was Brian Kemp. I mean, believe me, I spent way too much time in Georgia from the second day after the election. And I've made a lot of good friends there. There are a lot of great people there, but I think that there's just a really bad, sorry lot in those statewide elected officials. The only one is Burt Jones, who's running for governor.
Yeah. So in my state, Jenna Griswold is running to be the law. She's running to be attorney general. So I fully understand your vibe. Don't we also know from Fannie Willis's RICO case that they didn't do signature verification, that they never even turned on the Blue Crest machines?
Well, we know. Yeah, we knew that. We filed on behalf of President Trump, a group of volunteer lawyers. We filed an election contest on December the 4th of 2020. And we had over 40 categories of illegal votes that we had been able to race around and identify. There's supposed, it's a very truncated time that you have. And you have to, when you file an election contest, which is something that exists in the statutes of every state, the ability to come in and inspect, inspect the post-election, after the election. You have so many days after certification to file a contest. And so we did that, and we filed a contest, and we said we have these many categories. For instance, here are ballots that were cast by people whose voter registration was at a post office box. Well, under Georgia law, you're supposed to register at your primary residential address. I don't know anybody who actually lives in a P.O. box. And so those are bad registrations. Votes cast from those addresses should have been disqualified. They should not have been counted. We had 18,325 votes that were cast by people whose addresses were listed on post office records, U.S. postal records, as vacant properties. These are addresses that are vacant, either vacant lots, vacant houses, but nobody lived there. And then you have another set that 18,325 votes cast from addresses that the USPS says are vacant, that's more than the margin.
Yep.
And so, but and that was just one category. We had all these categories, and we had, that all of when they started recounting the ballots at 10:30 on election night, after they ran out all of the media and all the observers who were made to leave, being told we're done for the night. And then 30 minutes after they left, they started counting again. Well, that's illegal, because all processing and counting of ballots, the process of voting, the counting of ballots, that's all supposed to be, under Georgia law, that is all supposed to be done out in the open, with observers, with the media. And they counted for over an hour before they stopped again. And Brad Raffensperger on 60 Minutes, he kept making up things. He changed his story 3 times. First, he says they were just getting ready for the next day. They weren't really counting. Well, then we got the tape, and you could see for yourself, who you're going to believe, Brad Raffensperger or your lying eyes. And then he said, that they weren't really counting. They were doing something else. They were just processing. And then the third thing he said is that we edited the tape. I mean, he just lies. But we never got a judge appointed to hear the case. That's the most, when people say that President Trump lost all of his cases, he didn't lose the one in Georgia because he never got his day in court.
Most of the time, he didn't get a day in court. Most of the cases were dismissed on some sort of procedural grounds.
Right.
The State Farm Arena, to me, has always been one of the most fascinating, because you had so much that came out of that. They sued Rudy Giuliani. They sued a whole bunch of organizations about what actually took place there. And then when you look at the footage, I went through the footage of the State Farm Arena second by second, and documented every single thing the whole day, and every camera angle, second by second. And when you get to that, to the end of the night, when everybody left and they came back, and you can see them pull the boxes out from under the table. They cut the seals, the blue seals on there. You can watch them cut it. And then you can see the woman in the top left-hand corner of the screen scan the same batch 3 times. And then it goes dark at I think it's, I don't quote me on this, I think it's 11:15, but they kept counting for another.
It would have been 12:15.
No, we didn't, because they started, I think, around 10:45 or so, or maybe 11. And then and the film goes dead. There is no other footage. It just, and this is something I've asked our mutual friend over and over, hey, find me this footage. I'll go through minute by minute, every single minute from here on out. Nobody has ever been able to produce the rest of the closed circuit television, the security cameras for that night.
Well, we got the video that we received was not from State Farm Arena. They didn't turn it over to us. It was a different source, and I'm not at liberty to say where, but it actually, so I don't know what video you were watching, but the one that we received, because I've sat and watched it also, and watched it when they made everybody leave, and then when they started counting again. And they kept counting, and I've seen it then. They kept counting. They started again about 10:30, 10:35. And then they kept counting until about 12:15 the next day. So the video that I have looked at, that we presented to the state legislature, it has all of those. It has all of that time. But you're right about something. And actually, let me tell you a couple of interesting things you'll appreciate. There was a deposition of the people in the case, Garland's case, that was moving along and then stopped. But they did depose at least 2, maybe 3 of those workers who were there on the video. And they said under oath that yes, that they had processed the ballots more than once, because the tabulator kept jamming. And so the lawyer walked the witness, I can't remember which one it was, through, okay, so you did this, and That was once. Yes. Okay. And then you did this, and that was twice that you ran them through the tabulator. Yes. And then you did it. Yes, that was 3 times. 9 times. 9 times she said that she. And so he said, do you have any way of knowing whether any of those times you were running those through the tabulator, whether those were counted, where they actually counted? And she said, well, I don't really know. We don't really know. So there's that. And here's the other thing. There was this big Bill Barr, the attorney general at the time, announced that he was conducting an investigation of the claims of voter fraud in Fulton County and in Georgia. And I'm in Georgia and I'm watching this. I'm thinking, well, somebody's going to call me, because I'm here at the behest of the White House. So surely Bill Barr or somebody, the U.S. attorney or the FBI or somebody will call me. We never heard a word from them. And I read the transcript of the assistant U.S. attorney from Georgia, who testified to the U.S. Senate committee that investigated the election. Of course, they found everything was fine. But would you like to know what he investigated and what their conclusion was and why they decided and said everything was fine? Because he said that there were allegations that those ballots that you were just describing that were pulled out, that those were in suitcases. And he said, and we investigated that and we determined that those were bins. So there was no problem because they were bins. I'm thinking, I don't care if they're grocery sacks. That wasn't the point. Anyway, that
was though, Cleta, that was where the narrative went though, right? Like we all got yelled at for calling them suitcases for a while.
Right.
And all of the energy went to, they're not suitcases, they're official ballot box carrying device
bins. Ash, they're bins.
Yeah. Okay.
So what?
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, they're not suitcases, they're bins. Why'd they pull them out after dismissing everybody and count what was in them a whole bunch of times? Oh, they're bins.
Right. It's just amazing, isn't it? I mean, that is don't look over here, look over here. But that was the sum total of the DOJ FBI investigation, is to determine what kind of containers they were. Not the conduct, nothing. And they never talked to any of us who had been poring over the vote totals and the everything we could get our hands on, which is not a lot. And there's obviously been a lot more that has come out and has been documented since that time, that shows that there was just a complete nightmare of an election.
But they did. So Bill Barr and company did that investigation where they found that they were bins under the color of government authority, right? Isn't that technically obstruction?
Well, that's an interesting point. That's a very interesting point. I don't know though. Can you prosecute somebody for being just stupid?
I mean, I think it's being incredibly generous to just say that Bill Barr and his investigatory team were stupid.
Yeah.
Aren't they trained to follow the evidence where it leads?
Right. Well, I don't know, but the fact that we didn't get a judge appointed for a month. I mean, we did finally get notice on January 4th. I thought that was interesting. The chief judge the presiding judge finally assigned a judge. We got notice of it on the 4th of January, and that judge conveniently scheduled a trial for that Friday, which was after the election had been certified by Congress and all. We know all of that. So we got the notice of a judicial appointment and the notice of the trial we got the notice, all of that on January 4th with a trial date of January 8th. And, that was the whole argument that, we had been making behind the scenes to try to reach out to Raffensperger for every which way, and to the governor and to the attorney general, saying, look, we found all these irregularities. And the response of of all of those Republican office holders was, they didn't want to look at it. And Raffensperger's response was, well, your data is wrong. And we kept saying, well, okay, if our data is wrong, why don't we sit down and compare data? And if we're wrong, we'll tell everybody. But if you're wrong, you need to do something. But they did not want to do that. They did not want to do that. And I think that they did not want the president to have a day in court where we could actually present evidence.
Because we were all just supposed to move on. We were supposed to move on from the stolen election the way that everybody moved on from the prior stolen elections, and nobody was supposed to push it this far. But it was so egregious when they stole 2020 that we have not moved on, and we will not move on until we have justice.
Amen. Although, it is interesting because I keep thinking about the presidency and Donald Trump's second term and what we are witnessing every day. And it is so wonderful. And he is doing such an amazing job. And I think if he had been reelected, if they had let him be reelected in 2020, I don't think a lot of the things that are happening, I don't think they would be happening, because he's had 4 years to think about it, know about it, be the object of the weaponization, and see the horrible things that these people have done. And now just look at it. USAID is dismantled. It's gone. Yes. It's been fomenting communism around the world and against us. And so
the MS ISAC and the EI ISAC are now begging for membership from the counties. I got an email from a county clerk yesterday that was the MS ISAC begging for subscription fees from the counties.
It's just wonderful. Shut them all down. It's just wonderful. What CISA did. So on the one hand, but you're right. We have all been called names, ridiculed, threatened. Mark Elias, I do live rent-free in his head because, 2 weeks ago, he attacked me 4 times in 1 week. So that's how I know I must be doing a good job. But think of what they've done to people. People have, been attacked. They've lost jobs, etc. But you know what? We just keep moving. We are going to get the truth. We're going to get the truth, and we're going to get this fixed one way or another.
Yeah, your point about, now President Trump has the mandate. We talk about this a lot, and we spitball about this all the time, that if President Trump had somehow, emerged from his court cases and everything victorious in the 2020 election, the country itself probably would have went into sheer pandemonium. It would have been pure chaos, because the left still would not have believed that he won it, and they would have pushed back even harder. So you kind of get that 4 years of potato head in the Oval Office, squatting in the Oval Office, and everybody was begging for President Trump to come back. It was a historic victory, especially for a Republican. But that still doesn't change the fact that we haven't done, I'm not going to say we haven't done anything, but we haven't done much. Ashe and I covered, the Curling v. Raffensperger case. I flew up there and was in the courtroom for that entire case. And, the ruling that came back from Judge Totenberg in that case was absolutely horrifying. The judge ultimately said that your right to vote, which, by the way, there is no constitutional right to vote, but your voting rights end at your right to cast a ballot. You don't have any right to ensure that ballot was counted correctly. And to me, that just, a federal judge said that, blew my mind.
Well, it's because, remember, and we talked about this before the show, but let's remember that case was brought by a Democrat and before the 2020 election. And Judge Totenberg is the sister of Nina Totenberg, famous, infamous NPR report, Supreme Court reporter, covered the Supreme Court for many years. So she's an Obama appointee, this Totenberg, Judge Totenberg in Atlanta. And she presided over that trial. And it had been going on since 2017, 2018.
Yep.
And she had twice before, at least twice, I think, ruled against motions to dismiss for lack of standing. But that's when the Democrats were raising the ruckus about the voting machines. And so then now after 2020, now the positions are reversed. Now it's the Republicans who want to inquire about the voting machines. And now you've got this Democrat judge, and she's kind of, what am I going to do with this? She issues that ruling in November of 2023 saying that the system was unconstitutional and violated both federal and state law, the voting machines. Then they had a trial in January of 2024, and she finally issues a ruling, 3 months ago, saying, oops, I've decided the parties don't have standing. I mean, I know.
Mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing. But that appeal has been filed with the 11th Circuit.
Good.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because that standing issue is a very big issue in election law, because the standard for standing, who has the right to bring a lawsuit in the election space, we basically have, here's the rule that I've learned over the last 4 years. If you are a conservative or Republican, you do not have standing. But if you are a left-wing, anything, group, person, candidate, you always have standing. That's the way it works today.
Look what's going on up in, is it Rockland, New Jersey? Ash, you remember that one we covered up in New Jersey where they sued just to do a hand count? No, there's no relief, no remedy. They're not looking for anything. They just sued to do the hand count, and the judge is like, okay, sure, we'll have a trial for it. And it's like, whoa. You know how many things that they're latches? It's too late. There is no remedy. You can't. There's no relief that you can get from doing the hand count. And the judge is like, we're going to let you do the hand count. Were you not around in 2020 when they were dismissing? I stepped out of line when they were dismissing latches in Pennsylvania. Standing in Georgia. I mean, that just blew my mind. But
so this is a left-wing group wanting to do a hand count.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I tell you, they always have standing. That's the rule.
Nuts.
It is nuts.
So Cleta,
I mean, this is one of the reasons why I hope that the weaponization of government investigations are able to go somewhere and to remedy the issues with that, because it is political. And I also think there's other problems with election law, right? You have the election period, and you have this kind of 2-year time frame where there are certain very narrow windows in which you can challenge things and bring things. But if you get it, once you hit that election period, everybody's hands off. And then right after the election, well, it's moot because we certified it. And it to me, it seems like a scam. I don't know the law in that domain to understand how it's not a scam, but it certainly feels like it's set up that the election laws at the state level are set up to prevent anybody from, because legal remedies take time, right? It's a notoriously slow process to seek justice in the courts, to seek remedy for harm in the courts. When it comes to elections, it's like the amount of ways that they have to throw it out is astounding.
Well, particularly I think one of the things you're referring to is the case that was brought by the states, the other states against
Texas v. Pennsylvania.
The Texas case. Yeah.
I wasn't. It's a good one. I was actually thinking about Carrie Lake and the amount of times Carrie Lake tried to hit the courts in every single one of those windows, right? She went in before the governor race, and there was different things held here and there, and then the judge asked her in that, why aren't you making this for the primaries? You're making it for the general, and we have a primary. And she was like, well, her attorney said, well, we know that the timing is a key issue for the court here. And it's burdensome to the state of Arizona, to Maricopa County, to do the primary, but we can potentially, not have the machines in the election. And then the judge said, well, you didn't ask for it for the primary, so you must not really want it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that was essentially what happened. And then she came after again, right? But every single way you try to be able to present your case before a judge, they, unless you're someone like Michelle Long Spears in DeKalb County, who gets a hearing immediately and her race gets overturned because she's a Democrat. If that's not you, then they have, as what is it? Chuck Schumer said, 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you, to stop you from pursuing remedy.
All right.
So, Cleta, you had mentioned earlier that you live rent-free in Mark Elias's head. There's another individual that you live rent-free in their head, because as I was doing, my prep for the show and everything, I was looking through some past appearances that you had made, and unfortunately, you weren't actually on this show. And it was, I think, of a mutual friend of ours that we can call David Becker and Major Garrett, who, by the way, those two, they love doing shows together and patting each other on the back because they wrote a book together.
Right.
And so for those, and our audience knows this very well because Ash and I talk about it all the time, but David Becker founded ERIC, the Election Registration Information Center. He also founded CEIR, the Center for Innovation and Election Innovation and Research. I think that's what it's called, and the Election Defense Network for whatever. First off, it's beautiful to see so many states withdrawing. Something I write about over on Gateway all the time about the states that are withdrawing from ERIC. But a lot of the focus that you've had lately has been on voter rolls, which is extremely important. And two questions: one, in terms of the SAVE Act, Ash and I always point out that ERIC strictly does not allow states to send up citizenship information. It's in their bylaws. Do not send up information about whether or not this person is a U.S. citizen. So that's one question. How do we actually go about figuring out a way that you got to have checks in place? Because every place has automatic registration, right? In so many states now, anytime you engage with the government in any way, shape, or form, they register you. Sometimes you don't even know that they're registering you. So how do we fix that first?
That's not every state has that, thank goodness. But
Brian, only Siths steal in absolutes.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that we need to change in the federal law. We always talk about how the states, run the elections. Well, they do, but they operate within the confines of 5 federal statutes that are quite terrible and have and need to be modernized in the worst way. And one of them is is HAVA, and the Help America Vote Act that was passed after let me just pause here. You realize that after the 2000 presidential election, and how the left was bonkers, the Democrats were crazed over it because the Supreme Court, they said, cheated and handed the election to George Bush. And do you realize that after that election, Congress, with the help of Republicans, passed a complete overhaul of the election process, prohibited states from being able to use punch card systems or the old lever machines, and appropriated several $1 billion to replace the equipment. Has everybody forgotten that? I mean,
it gave birth. It gave birth to the industry. Gave birth to the modern election industry.
Exactly. That's where you mentioned Garland Favorito. Garland, when I used to do a podcast, Garland was on my podcast, and he said that the passage of that law, and he was working in the field, is what caused him to realize, oh my gosh, they don't even realize what they're doing. But maybe they did know exactly what they were doing. They knew
exactly what they were doing.
So, but my point is that it's okay for the Democrats to have a meltdown and change the voting system. But when we come in and say, hey guys, there's something wrong with this, we need to be completely silenced. But it's just the double standard is beyond me. It's just beyond me.
And so, Cleta, the second question, then I'll give it back to Ash here. Part of the Doge operation that we saw with Elon Musk was the expose on the Social Security database and how many excess numbers. I think over 100 million. I think he said like 450 million names in there. I say this all the time, is everybody's always talking about the Medicare and the Medicaid and all the benefits that are going out and all that. And I said, no. The big deal about that is the voter rolls, because the Social Security database is one of the checks that are used to validate voter registrations. And so if you have 120 million excess people in the Social Security database, that's 120 million names that you can add. And we always saw, like after the 2020 election, people would always be telling us, in Arizona, we saw 100,000 names get put on right before the election and then taken off right afterwards. It feels to me like they're right there at figuring out how they're doing it in that regard. And I was wondering if you had any insight into that.
Well, my understanding is, and I've been looking to see, and maybe you've seen this. I've looked not very hard, but to try to see what has transpired since that announcement about the problems with the Social Security database. I have to think that they've gone through and cleaned it up as a result of Doge. But it's, as you point out, it's really important because under the Help America Vote Act, one of the two ways that you verify someone's identity when they register to vote is either through their driver's license or through the Social Security system. And if somebody doesn't have a driver's license, you're supposed to check the last 4 digits of their Social Security number. And there's a whole system called the HAVV, the Help America Vote Verification System. And so they're supposed to, election officials are supposed to confirm identity and that the person's alive by checking with the Social Security system. So, and using that HAVV. So my understanding is that they have cleaned up that database. They need to make a bigger deal about that, frankly, because I think a lot of us are worried about that. But secondly, I know that the Department of Homeland Security has entered into a data sharing agreement with the Social Security Administration. So to add the Social Security data to the SAVE verification system that DHS runs, which is the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements system, which is supposed to be where where states and jurisdictions can check to see if someone who's not here, who's not a citizen, is eligible for benefits, welfare benefits and food stamps, et cetera. But now that's being used to confirm, and that is supposed to check citizenship status. And so they've worked really hard this year since President Trump took office on being able to use that SAVE system to be able to have batch uploads so you can run a whole voter roll system. So it's not an individual check, to check if this person or this person or this person is a citizen. So but I know they've entered into data sharing agreement with the Social Security Administration. And now there are about 20 states that have signed memoranda of agreement with the DHS to turn their voter rolls over to DHS to let them be analyzed to identify non-citizens. And, the left, they hate election integrity. So what I've decided is, okay, you're either for election integrity or you're against integrity. Well, if you're not for integrity, well, you must be for corruption. So I think we have to just start saying that. These people are anti-integrity, pro-corruption. They're corrupt. And they want corruption. They want corrupt voter rolls. They want corrupt voting systems. They want no accountability, no transparency. And that's what we're fighting against. But the thing is, the people are with us. And Ash, you said something that I think is really important. You said between the independents or unaffiliated and the Republicans, there's a big majority. If you look at every single one of the election reforms that we want, that we think need to be made, we had, and we created this U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights, which has the 10 principles, and then within that, the different things that need to be done to accomplish those principles. Every one of them has massive public support. It's like tiny. You talk about the 80-20 issues. All of the election changes that we want are 80-20 minimum 80-20 our side.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I want to talk about what those 10 principles are. That was what I was going to bring up next, but I just want to address, in terms of the left hates voter integrity, election integrity. This is another very clever narrative game that we get, because what they will make it all about access. Access is the number one metric for Democrats, but it's really for the system as a whole right now. Access is prioritized over accuracy rather, and over security. When, anybody in the Colorado state government, any of the mouthpiece clerks that speak for the Clerks Association, anybody being interviewed by the media, when they are asked a question about election security, and David Becker did this on the last thing that Brian and I reviewed of his, because we do, Cleta, like Mystery Science Theater over David Becker's town hall things that he does. But on the last one, he said it as well. When faced with a question about security, they will acknowledge safe and secure, most safe and secure, and they will shift their response to talk about access. It is the most accessible election that we've had. We had, X growth in turnout, and so many people are showing up because our democracy, they shift it every single time because it's the only metric that they care about, access. And that goes with everything that the left does anyway, right? It's this feelings based. We have to sacrifice election security and accuracy and integrity, because if one person is prevented from voting, then all of then democracy is destroyed for everyone, right? So we have to open the door super wide. We have to let everybody in, and if a few get in that aren't eligible, that's fine, but don't worry, we have all these safeguards, and they don't ever prevent the breaches or the problems. 30,000 postcards in Colorado. That was an Eric DMV data coding mismatch, but it was just a mistake, and it happened 2 election cycles in a row.
It was a glitch.
Right. There's a glitch. Everything's fine. Everything is secure. Access. And it's this empathy, weaponized empathy, go on the feelings. We can't let one person that potentially might be eligible to vote not vote, so we can't have any controls on it. And it's the same argument that they're using right now to get rid of signature verification as a requirement. In the Kansas Supreme Court, it was last year or 2023, the League of Women Voters versus the Republicans there, the League of Women Voters made the argument that signature verification on mail-in ballots is a unnecessary poll tax, and they lost, but one of the Supreme Court justices of Kansas agreed with them in his dissent. That's, we're shifting to this unnecessary poll tax to verify a mail-in ballot. They sold us mail-in ballots with signature verification as the control. It's why we can trust it. Oh no, you can trust it without that, is what we get now.
Well, do you know that the Third Circuit federal court just ruled within the last couple of months that the requirement under Pennsylvania law that the envelopes returning mail ballots must contain a date, and the date has to be before the election. And they ruled that that's a violation. It's a constitutional violation of equal protection rights.
Yeah.
Now, it applies to everybody who submits a mail ballot, but somehow the Third Circuit has just ruled that that's a violation of equal protection. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
So, Cleta, I think this week, was the date that President Trump had designated for a report on regarding his executive order on elections. And I was wondering, I know there's a couple challenges to, the citizenship, and there was one other challenge out there. And I know you'll know, but have you heard anything about that report and where we're at with that in terms of, are we going to get some of these machines certified by the new VVSG 2.0? What's going to happen with that? Hardin Civic. Is it 2.1 now?
2.1, because see, the EAC issued 2.0, the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines 2.0 in February of 2022. maybe February 2022, and just had the first system certified under the VVSG 2.0 about 2 months ago.
Yep.
And what the president had said in his executive order 12424 that he issued in March of this year was directing the EAC to conduct develop a new guideline to make the voting machines, all the technology, be compliant with a new set of standards, 2.1, that would be ensure that you would have a paper backup and you wouldn't be reading barcodes or QR codes, and that some other means of making the voting systems more secure. And the EAC has started that process. That was not enjoined, and the EAC started the process. And you made reference, Ash, to the Association of Election Officials. They are the bane of my existence. I mean, they are just awful. And I'm not kidding. It is not just Democrats. You've got Republican election officials all over this country. I hate those associations of election officials because they fight every change, everything that would make the elections more secure. They've all been indoctrinated by David Becker and his ilk. But
some of them are co-conspirators, though. So here in Colorado, we have Matt Crane. Matt Crane was a clerk, and his wife worked. I don't think she works there anymore, but worked for Dominion, invested in Dominion, and then he went and was the poster boy for global mobile voting, and then revolving doored back into Colorado as the executive director of the Colorado County Clerks Association. What does that mean in practice? It means he is the subject matter expert that all questions about elections are escalated to when it comes to any questions about machines or systems or anything in the state. Not anybody at SecState, not anybody in the clerk's office. They don't bring it to the vendor directly. They go through this association, and he's the mediator and arbiter of any citizen questions or any clerk questions about the systems, about the machines. And he gives you the standard answer, which is basically vendor talking points.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is that this National Association of Election Directors has a statutory role in the process by which the EAC develops the VVSGs. They kept saying, we need more time. We need more time to be able to present their position on the proposed 2.1 guidelines that the EAC was in the process of developing in response to the executive order. And literally this went on for 2 months. And at the meeting a week ago, they said they still weren't ready. And I mean, the chairman of the EAC, Don Palmer, you should have him on sometime, but he was livid. And he said, fine, if you're not ready, they were trying to hold it up. In other words, he said the work that they are doing, that some of these election administrators are doing across the country to try to stand in the way of the executive order and implementation of it is just shocking. But he said they were just going to go ahead and proceed to the next step. But they're behind now because of this group, this National Association of Election Directors, are refusing to participate, thinking they would just throw sand in the gears. But let me mention something else, and this is something that I hope that you will promote any way that you can, because one of the things the president included in the executive order was directing the EAC, the Election Citizens Commission, to change the federal voter registration application, which under the National Voter Registration Act, NVRA, every state is required to accept and use the federal voter registration application. And that's the form that has the question at the top that says, are you a citizen? And you check yes or no, but you don't have to provide any proof of that. That's what the SAVE Act was, that's been passed by the House twice, was it would add to that form a requirement of providing documentary proof of citizenship. So you don't just check a box, but you have to actually show that you're a citizen. Well, now then, because the EAC, that's one of the things the president asked the EAC to do. Well, America First Legal Foundation came in and filed a petition for rulemaking that anybody can file with a federal agency, and they have to act. And so that has now been posted on regulations.gov. If you go to regulations.gov, that's where all proposed federal regulations are posted, and the public can weigh in. And the petition is asking the EAC to amend the form to add the requirement for documentary proof of citizenship. So it's like all of us get to vote on the SAVE Act. And so we need thousands of people to file comments. And this is a it's a very easy process. You go to regulations.gov, and then it'll have a search, and you just put in EAC. You can just put in EAC, and the first thing that pops up is this petition for rulemaking, and it'll say submit comments, and there's a little box, and you can write out your comments, or if you want to make it a big, long, full,
attach.
You're right. Let me look up here. Go here. Put in Election Assistance Commission. Put in Election Assistance Commission.
So you can give your comments, and you can tell that
go back up there and then hit search. Search.
I did. This is what it's giving me. Maybe it's under dockets.
There it is. No. You know what? Yeah. Comments. No, it's under comments. Go back.
Oh, comments. There we go.
Well, that's weird.
All right, let me try EAC.
That's it. 2005-36.
Comments from Riss Allen. Oh, these are the comments that they're making on it.
Oh, I know. That's not. I've had no problem with this. Why are we having problems with this now?
Because they've bugged the computer. Oh, here we go.
There it is. The petition of America First Legal Foundation for rulemaking. Right. And then it's open, and then comment. Yeah, press comment. And then you can this tells you everything that they have submitted saying, yes, we want to, and then write a comment. And then you just write out your comment, and then you hit submit. Give them your email address so that you'll get an email from them that will say your comment has been accepted, has been submitted, and then watch to see when it's posted. They're running way behind and getting things posted, but you can also write it out and upload it. It's not a difficult process, but although we had a little trouble there, but
and the specific matter that we're providing comment on in this rulemaking is we the American people want proof of citizenship to be able to register to vote.
That's exactly right. And we want the EAC to amend the form to require the documentation. That's exactly right.
Awesome. I think I will when I do mine, Cleta.
What?
October 20th is the deadline, so everybody do it now. When I do mine, I'm going to attach my trial transcripts where Chris Beal explained the ERIC system and basically how ERIC does send non-citizens but does not send citizenship info, and we're relying on the code of the reconciliation. That's going in there.
That's fantastic. And you can upload PDFs or Word documents or whatever. Just make sure you include your
federal trial transcripts.
That's fantastic. Just make sure you include your email address so that you can get confirmation that they've received it. But literally after they're received, and federal agencies required under federal law to then go through every comment submitted. They're required by law to do that. They have to separate. They have to say how many were for and how many were against. And if we can overwhelm them with positive, favorable comments, and they don't do it, then they can be sued for failure to properly take into account what the public has said and what the comments have urged them to do. So this is a pretty great opportunity for us.
Excellent.
That's awesome. So Cleta, as we start to wrap up here, I kind of want to get your overall sense of where we're at with elections and where we need to be heading? Like what are the maybe top 3 things that you think we need to be focused on going into the 2026 primaries?
Well, look, I'm all about, I want everybody to go to our website, www.electionintegritynetwork.org. And on our website, we have the U.S. Citizens Elections Bill of Rights and these 10 principles. And there are a number of things that we need to do. We need to make certain that only citizens are participating in our body politic. That means registration and voting. It means giving money to campaigns and candidates and issue campaigns. It means making sure we count the number of citizens versus non-citizens who are in our country, and that we apportion the U.S. House of Representatives based on citizen population, not total population, that federal funds are allocated based on citizens and not total population. I mean, these are things that we need to make certain that we do, that none of the voting, no parts or no voting systems or component parts should be made or manufactured in a foreign country, that they should be made in America. No technology used in our elections should be owned. Those companies shouldn't be owned by, in whole or in part, by foreign companies or individuals. And only U.S. citizens should be allowed to work as paid workers in our election system. You know, if you think about, these are all things that we've realized over the last 4 years, but that's all under one principle, protecting, making sure that only citizens are participating in America's body politic. And then the next one is, let's restore election day. Let's restore, all ballots have to be received by the time the polls close on election day, that we return to precinct voting, and that we have in-person voting, except for those people who absolutely cannot get to the polls. And we go back to the time when we had some protections for voting. I mean, you realize that all the protections that we have against undue influence and improper influence and duress and stealing somebody's intent of how they want to vote, all the things that are in place at a polling place, those protections are gone when you mail everybody a ballot and you have ballot harvesting and you have, people, can trade in ballots, and ballots become their currency. And so we need to have a chain of custody and transparency in the process. We need to clean the voter rolls regularly, get rid of the blackout periods that are imposed by federal law and the restrictions on states cleaning their voter rolls. That particular question of making sure we have proper voter registration processes, that nobody's registered unless they file an application, unless information is then verified, and clean the voter rolls regularly and remove the restrictions on when voter rolls can be cleaned. That principle of cleaning up voter registration, voter rolls, 91% in our poll in January, Scott Rasmussen tested it, 91% of the American people agreed with that. Wow. And that's one of the number one things that the corruption crowd, they fight us more on voter rolls than anything else. So those are,
because it's plausible deniability. They need the padded voter rolls to accomplish the rest of it. And I agree with you on the registering vote, and that will be fought by the left and the right if we're going to put an end to the, just get out the vote efforts from the left and the right that have no verification of eligibility. And what you see downstream of those efforts is that the clerk's offices or the state offices get stacks upon stacks, thousands of registrations, and they're rubber stamped through and nobody's checking. And our rolls are incredibly padded, and it's damn near impossible to get even dead people off of them. Right. Except, as Brian mentioned earlier, there's this wave pattern that happens in the data where there's a massive buildup of people on the voter rolls that are cold right afterwards. We're never allowed to ask questions.
I've never figured out that. That makes no sense.
A lot of those people voted too. We checked here in Colorado.
Of course. But anyway, we oppose ranked choice voting and, national popular vote. Those are fake systems that are created by billionaires, and we are only dealing with them because these left-wing billionaires have concocted these systems. And we want to return to, closed primaries and just basic representation, that, and these laws that have been pushed down our throats, we need to, in some places, we need to get rid of them, and we need to keep them from happening in other places. But like I said, we need to reform the overseas voting system, UOCAVA, and separate deployed military from civilians, because those are not the same. And they hide behind the military, and the military percentage, the percent of military vote of the whole overseas UOCAVA vote in 2024 was less than a third. It's mainly civilians. And there's no requirement, there's no checking to see if they are actually a citizen or if they even live overseas.
Yep.
And so that is we need to fix that. And they did that. They combined it because they wanted to be able to hide behind the military portion to do their
They're diluting the military, though. That's the other side. That's the nefarious part of this. And I personally don't think, based on the information available, that it's an accident or an unforeseen consequence. I think it's the point that when you put all expats around the world in the same bucket as military, you give all those expats military protections of the vote, but you're also diluting the military vote at the same time. It's despicable.
Right. It is despicable. So I've been working with a couple of members of Congress and some veterans organizations, and I've suggested that we call it the Power Act. Protect our warriors' election rights. The Power Act. And so we're working on language for that. But so there are 10 principles. Let me see what I've left off. But if you go to the electionintegritynetwork.org website, all of those 10 principles are there. And we're in the process of preparing, and we are going to release, as soon as we finish, model policies for implementing each of the principles, and we'll publish that. And then it's going to be up to people to go to their state legislators and members of Congress and say, we want this done. And we want policymakers across the country. We need to start regaining traction and inserting ourselves into the election system, because the left has had it as their playground for decades. And we haven't been there, just like parents figured out they need to go to school board meetings, need to be reading, seeing what their kids are reading in school, in the libraries and all. That's what we have to do with elections. We have to be there. We have to be there. And we have to be telling them, we know what's going on. We're here to fix it. We're not going to we're not going to be sent home. We're not going to be patted on the head, but we're going to fight back against these associations of clerks, and we're going to reclaim our elections.
Amen.
Amen. Well, Cleta, thank you so much for joining. It was an honor to have you on tonight. And if you can make that connection with Mr. Palmer, we would love to get him on Why We Vote as well. Where can people find you online?
Well, our website is www.electionintegritynetwork.org. And then I'm on X as at Cleta Mitchell. And I go in spurts. I've been so depressed since Charlie Kirk was killed that it's been really hard for me to sort of get back on social media. But I'm going to try to get back going again. But I've just been pretty despondent. I think we all are over the last couple of weeks. I met Charlie when it was first starting Turning Point, and so this is pretty devastating to me.
Yeah.
Well, you can't let the evil win. We still gotta fight, and that's exactly what Charlie would have done. He would have kept on fighting, and so that's what we got to do. Before we let you go, Cleta, was there anything that you wanted to say that we didn't get to?
No, I just hope everybody will please take 5 minutes, go write some comments. And, we actually, if you go to our website, the Election Integrity Network website, all of the instructions, we did a short instructional video about how to post comments. And I hope people will do that. It's really important for us to have our voices heard.
By October 20th, and will continue to push. Yeah, we'll continue to push everybody to do it every week. I also just want to say, if you go to network.org, the very first tab is the Elections Bill of Rights that she was reading, the 10 principles. So if you want to go visit that, spend more time with those principles and get to know better those arguments, that's the place to do it. Thanks, Cleta, for being here.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
And if you get a chance to read that, the Venezuelan deposition, and
I'm going to go read that. Yeah, I saw it, but I haven't had a chance to read it. I'm going to go read it.
If you want to come back and talk about that, reach out and we'll get you back on. So, Cleta, thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Cleta Mitchell.
So we're going to talk about Venezuela next week.
Yeah, we'll talk about Venezuela next week. It was too good. I couldn't.
Yeah, it was great.
Pull away from that because, she's one of the OGs, man. She is one of the OGs in this integrity movement. Her and I can never remember her name now. Bev Harris. Harris is another OG. We got to get her on here soon. I'm going to reach out to her and see if we can get her on coming up. So
Marilyn Marks, another OG.
We had Marilyn Marks on.
No, I know. I'm just saying she's another OG.
Oh yeah, Garland's an OG. I mean, there's a lot of OGs out there. But yeah. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, it's up there. It's pinned at the top. Do it by October 20th. And again, if you want to go to electionintegritynetwork.org, you can, Cleta has a way for you guys to, kind of like a walkthrough on how to do it. We do have one Rumble rant here.
Before you get to the Rumble rant, for folks on the call to action on regulations.gov and the link that Brian has in the chat and I have in the chat, it's pinned in the chat right now. By October 20th, the question is citizenship. You want citizenship, proof of citizenship to be required to be able to register to vote and to vote. That's what you're providing comment on. You don't have to understand every single aspect of elections to go make your voice heard on the regulation. Say, listen, we have to be able to prove that citizens are the ones voting. We have to have that as a requirement. That's the ask. You don't, it's, I know people can get overwhelmed by this kind of stuff and be like, well, I don't really understand the issue. You definitely understand the issue that we only want American citizens voting in American elections. That's what this is about.
Amen. All right. Maya Bean says, wish it could be more. Thank you both for all your hard work. It is greatly appreciated, Maya Bean. Thank you so much. Crew 6561, good to see you. Great show. He was at the Codex.
Nice.
I think it's his wife. I can't remember. I apologize. Can't remember if it was wife or girlfriend. I'm pretty sure it's wife, but they were at the Codex. So thank you and good to see you, brother. And
thanks,
that's it. So stay tuned. You got Spellbreakers coming up right after the show here, and then Only Lands will be on after that. And then
you coming?
I'm pretty sure I am. I'm pretty sure
Jonathan Drake's gonna be on.
Oh, okay. Well, I gotta see because I'm not. If there's like already like 8 people lined up, I'll just. I
think I only know of 3 so far, so you should come.
All right. I haven't seen Christy all day. She's been gone the entire day. So.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Tell her I said hi.
I absolutely will.
All right. Ash. She looks hot in the black and white dress.
She might be listening. Probably not, but maybe. So.
Well, if she's listening, then I just told her myself. Everybody, please hit the thumb for us. Helps us out. It's an important metric for us here. So hit that like button.
All right.
Soft disclosure, which I know you're going to play as an outro, but I just want to say soft disclosure is awesome. And there's more products coming soon. But the lip smacker version of the tallow bar, it is awesome. You're really good. And there's new flavors of deodorant and lotions coming soon too. So definitely check that out.
And beard oils. All right, guys. Yeah, beard oils. All right, we'll see you later, guys.
Deodorant should do more than cover you up. It should protect you all day long.
Dude, the deodorant stick is legit. I like the mint one. And, you go work out and you kind of get like, you get funky if you work out. Dude, like at the end of my workout, like I'm sweating, shirt got all those sweat. Like I'm like, dude, I still smell good. Like, I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't tried it, try it.
That's the difference with soft disclosure. No aluminum, no chemicals, just clean, natural ingredients that fight odor and keep you fresh through every workout, every meeting, every moment.
I've always struggled with the like you can't use aluminum deodorant because you're going to die if you use it kind of thing, because all of the non-aluminum aluminum deodorant products suck pretty much. This is different. This is all day. You're all day good, and you're not putting any of that disgusting chemicals right near your lymph nodes.
Soft Disclosure deodorant. Real protection. Real freshness. Built on truth. Available in mint and lemon grapefruit. Visit softdisclosure.com and use promo code Badlands for 15% off.